And then you, on your journey, I mean, you were podcasting for fun. Like it was me and you on your couch in your house with Red Band, just kind of fucking hanging out, just talking about random shit. And then the podcast is the thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like something happened somewhere along the line where, there's like this exponential growth, and it happens and you don't realize it's happening. You know when I realized it was happening is about 5 years ago. I was in Chicago and I was doing the Chicago theater, and I just go, how many of you guys listen to the podcast? And the whole place erupted. And I went, oh. I was like, maybe I should pay attention to the numbers. Like, how many people are listening to this thing? And that's when there was like a real clear moment where it was 3,700 people in the crowd. When I said, how many of you listen to the podcast? The whole place went crazy. And I remember thinking, whoa, what is going on here? Mm-hmm. And then that was nothing compared to like the transition that happened somewhere around 2 years ago. 2 years ago, it just seems to have just caught fire.
Yeah.
And now it's taken over my life. Now I just show up and just, I feel like I'm an antenna. I just show up and turn on and just like, oh, go ahead. And then it does the job. Like the podcast runs itself. Really does feel like it. Like I'm just the person who's been chosen by the podcast to get it out there. It's very weird.
And you almost have to keep that attitude, right? Because if you tried to like intentionally steer it and guide it, you'd probably just be getting in the fucking way of actually what wants to happen, which is these authentic conversations with interesting people.
Yeah, that's half the problem is thinking about it. Yeah, and getting out of my own way. Yeah, and trying to get the most out of the guest, trying to get the guest comfortable, trying to sort of clarify their ideas or sort of package them for folks like me, or it's a very, very strange thing that I never anticipated doing, and even while I'm doing it, I'm it's just, there's no other way to describe it. It's just fucking weird.
Yep. And to be I'm in like a little microcosm, right? Because there's this little ecosystem here and a little podcast. And, I go to particularly Erewhon. Erewhon is like my hot spot out in Venice, where there'll be a couple of people, hey man, nice podcast. But for you, it's like, it's now kind of everywhere.
Yeah. There's so many people who've listened to it now that it's gotten into some very strange territory where everywhere you go, people know who you are. It's very, people kind of knew who I was from other stuff. Like they would go, oh, there's that guy. But now they know you. Like they've listened to me talk for hundreds and hundreds of hours. So it's a very weird existence that I didn't plan on,
And then are there challenges of kind of, do you ever like look at it and get a little freaked out? Like,
yeah, I look at the numbers.
Yeah. I'd be like, whoa.
It gets like 190 million downloads a month.
Yeah.
That number's crazy.
And that's pressure. That would be pressure to engage your head. Because when the head gets overwhelmed and thinks like, oh, this is a lot. We gotta like try and do something. It's actually the opposite instinct for what you really need, which is just getting out of the way and trusting doing the same thing.
I'm pretty good at compartmentalizing, lucky. So I just go, ooh. And I just go, all right, here we go. And we just do it again, But part of me goes, okay, how much longer are you going to do this? Like, what are you going to do with this thing? Like, are you going to do this forever? Like, you're going to do this till your heart stops beating? Like, what is this? And then people will literally grab me and go, don't stop doing the podcast. It's the only thing that keeps me together. Mm-hmm. Like, Jesus, you need to find some other shit that keeps you together.
Yeah, because if you take that pressure on, that'll be too stressful.
No, that's not happening. Like, I will fucking abandon that thing in a heartbeat and move to the mountains.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. So what is like the you have to have some kind of like guidelines or ethos, and it seems like I've known you for, as I said, like almost a decade. It seems like you're just there showing up to have the conversation. It's not an intention but it's really just trusting, I guess.
Yeah. There's a lot of that. Just be authentic, try to be yourself, and be honestly interested in the guest. Luckily, I don't work for anyone, so I don't have like a network that's telling me we'd like to get this guy on this month and that guy on that month. There's no one doing that. So everyone I get on is like, oh, that guy seems interesting. Like, like Colin O'Brady walked across the Antarctica with the fucking 375-pound sled behind him, dragging it. I'm like, yeah, get that guy in here.
Mhm.
You know, like some guy who wrote a book on climate change. Like, oh, get that guy in here. You know, some guy who's a war reporter. You know, Ben Anderson, who's goes over to Iraq and Afghanistan and Bahrain. He's getting shot at and filming things and taking photographs. And he's a journalist. Like, yeah, I want to know here about what this guy's doing. Like, that kind of shit. It's just people that I'm actually interested in talking to, or comedians, or guys like you, or friends, or it's there's never been a thing like this before. This is all uncharted territory in the world of media. I mean, that sounds like a grandiose thing to say, but it's actually accurate. In in the human world, there's never been a thing like a podcast before. I mean, there's been shows before that people have watched, but there's never been a show that's so readily available. It has dozens of platforms. You can get it off a bunch of different podcast apps through RSS feeds. You can get it from Stitcher. You can get it off of iTunes and Google Play. You can get it off of YouTube. You can get it off of Vimeo. And it's never been a thing like that that's free that you could just get anywhere, and there's no big machine behind it.
Yeah, no filters.
Just 3 people. I have 3 people that work with me. That's it. The whole thing is 3 people.
And that's why I think it is so radically revolutionary, is because it's so authentic. Like when people say like, I feel like I know you, and they say that to anybody who's a podcast host who's doing a podcast like the podcast we do, they do actually.
Yeah.
Because there's like,
you can't hide in when you're I've done 1,200 something podcasts plus Fight Companions. All of them are more than 2 hours long. I mean, most of them at least. You can't hide. There's no hiding. There's no hiding. That's who you are.
And hiding is like one of the most fundamental traits of a human being, is in some way projecting some avatar, some way that they want to appear to others, some way that they want to protect themselves by projecting something. And like that shit ultimately doesn't work in this format.
Yeah, that's sort of like what like extreme fashion is all about, right? And like cultivating an image and hiring a publicist to curate articles. And there's none of that in this world. And I think that's a dying ember of a lost civilization. That the world we live in now, it's going to be, within the next 50 years, total transparency with every single thing you do. You're going to have to get used to the fact that there's no privacy.
They have to do that with politics. Like, soon enough, you're going to have presidential candidates who come, and it's not going to be like, when Obama did that thing and it was like, here's a list of questions. You got 7 dudes there making sure that it doesn't fucking stray from that. Right. Like, that's not going to fly. Like, people don't want that. People want just a fucking conversation. Hey, fucking Barack, how come you didn't legalize weed, man?
Right. Exactly.
Like, and have them just answer that question.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, you got bought and paid, son. Yeah, I mean, there's a new world that we're experiencing, and it's really only 20 years old. I mean, that's the real impact of the internet is 20, 25 years. And during those 20, 25 years, and really not until social media. I mean, there was the internet, which was great for people putting up things on websites and commerce and a lot of other various ways that people use the internet, but nothing like what social media opened up. What social media and YouTube opened up is individual content creators, people who are just a regular guy like you or me, who just say, I'll just fucking get a laptop with a webcam and start talking. And you could do that. And there's these guys like Logan Paul, or, there's a kid who reviews toys and he makes $20 million a year on YouTube. Like, what? The fuck did you just say? The kid's reviewing toys, man. His parents he's like 6 or something. And he makes $20 million a year on YouTube reviewing toys. I mean, that job wasn't available before YouTube. I mean, it's very, very weird. Very weird.
And if that kid wasn't that's the most authentic way probably to get that toy review. Get a fucking 6-year-old who doesn't have a script, who's going to play with it. And figure out if the thing's dope or not dope. Yeah. And I think that's what people are drawn to, because we've had so much projection from media that has an incentive, either through the advertising or through the money or through the pressure of the executives or through like all these fucking reality shows. They're all scripted. Yeah. They all have like story writers and all of this stuff. And all of that's like kind of bursting because people realize like, yeah, we're addicted to the drama to a certain degree. Some people are, and they just like seeing people in these heightened emotional states, but it's not real.
No, and they
None of that.
oftentimes will use a different answer for their question. Like they'll have answered something completely non-related, and they'll take that answer and shove it into a different question to make the contestant look bad or make the person on the show look bad. They do whatever they want. They're just trying to manipulate things and create drama. And you buy into this idea that it's authentic, but you kind of know it's not. But you don't really know the extent that it's not authentic because they really are working without a script. But that all of that stuff is horseshit. And that reality is much more real than the stuff that we were used to before that, like scripted things.
Yep.
Like scripted TV shows. Like, do you remember like they would have these shows like just these really dumb crime dramas or really dumb television shows where, you know, some guy was a fucking jet pilot or something like that.
Yep.
And there's people around them and everybody acted fake and weird. Those shows, they can't exist in the
They're
in the
insufferable.
wake. Yeah. And now that like Netflix exists and there's no censorship and Netflix is just wide open with nudity and swears and they can do whatever they want, like those shows seem
Or HBO,
dumb.
yeah.
Or, yeah. And so these things are falling apart with this new media. And then, you know, for scripted shows, that's like the benchmark now is television, where the television used to be a place you would go if your career went away. Like if your movie career fell apart, you would go on television. But now television is superior. It's like most movies, they're kind of whack. You know, 90 minutes in, you don't really know anybody that well, and it's over, and you have this big character arc, and, you know, they're pretty good, but is it as good as like watching Ozark? You know, is it as good as watching Stranger Things? It's not. It's not. They're better.
Yeah.
It's just better to see everything take place over 10, 20, 30 episodes. And I think what we used to accept, like if you try to watch late night television now after podcasts, it seems so corny and so stupid.
Hard.
It's so dumb.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, that they're throwing these phony ass questions at these people. The people have been prepped. The host probably doesn't give a shit about their new television show or their new album or whatever the fuck they're talking about. It's not like he like reached out and go, this guy's really cool. I want to get him on. I love his music. We'll sit down and have an authentic conversation. No, it's weird. You know, it's a weird way of promoting things that was fine in the Jack Parr days or the Johnny Carson days because that's all they had.
Yeah.
But now it's not fun anymore. You know, and as time moves on, podcasts will seem archaic and limited in the way that they expose people, expose you to ideas. Once mind reading software gets developed and, you know, we're all wearing chips, you know, like that bit that I'm doing about like having something in your body that, you know, instead of having a cell phone in your hand, one day they're going to figure out a way to get it in your body. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
And when that does happen, whether it's some sort of an implant or whatever it is, we're going to laugh at the days where people carried their phones around.
It's I think it's a quote from Bertrand Russell, or one of the philosophers, that said if they developed that software that projected everybody's thoughts out there for everybody to see, everyone would be horrified for like 3 days and they wouldn't leave their house. Like, oh my God, we're in a world of savages. Like, don't go out. But then after a little while, everybody would get used to it because they'd realize, oh yeah, everybody wants to fuck and everybody has weird, fucked up thoughts. And a lot of people are sad and a lot of people are anxious and a lot of people are going through hard shit and stuff is not easy. And podcasts are at least the bridge where you or I can just talk about that stuff. And probably the best reactions we get is when we or a guest we have is just like exposing some of these things, not just the glorious things, not just the heroic moments that we've had, but like, yeah, fuck, you know, I was depressed for this time, or I was super anxious. I got so jealous. I was like crawling around on the ground. Didn't know if I wanted to vomit or cry. You know, you tell that stuff and people are like, oh, I felt that shit too. Yeah. And then they feel not alone anymore. They're like, oh, I'm not alone.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have a problem with looking at people in media, right? Whether it's music videos or television or Instagram. Instagram's particularly like it's a little tiny little window, and people are using filters and they're manipulating the size of their waist and the size of their butt, and you know, and girls are putting these filters on that makes their skin look like a animation.
Yeah,
and they're doing this to try to make you think that they are this insanely unusual human being that is so exceptional and so different than you. living this perfect life. My abs are always flexed. Always, everywhere I go. Look at that six pack, motherfucker. I mean, it's weird. And that's one of the more interesting windows into people, and probably like the least accurate. Whereas podcasts are one of the most accurate windows into a person. You know, listening to people talk for hours and hours at a time with no script and no idea where the conversation is going to go. You find out who people are. But I really do think that what Bertrand Russell, if that was him that came up with that, that is going to happen. It's going to happen in our lifetime. And it's happening slowly but surely already. It's just happening in some sort of very strange and complicated way where when it's upon us, it'll be too late. It'll be like too late. You can't pull back, and everybody's going to be already invested in whatever ecosystem, you know, has been created by this technology. And that you're gonna have to expose yourself. People are gonna be able to watch people fuck and shit and eat, and it's going to be, there's no privacy. Privacy, I think, in 100 years would be a hilarious concept. I really do. Unless you're a fucking pioneer,
right?
And unless you're, you know, Haimo Kuth living in fucking northern Alaska.
Well, the thing is that ego knows itself by relative position. So it likes to hide things and shade things, even like pretending that you don't fart, right? Like you want to be the one that doesn't, like, I mean, guys usually don't have the problem with this, but some, not to be gender specific, but a lot of girls are like, no, I don't fart. You know, I won't do that around other people. Like you're pretending, you're denying some aspect of your humanity.
Or just being polite.
Yeah, you know? Perhaps.
Maybe girls are just more polite than us.
That might be true. But hiding certain elements of your humanity, certain things to like, so that you appear in a certain way is fucking exhausting. And ultimately you're fishing with a lure that isn't your real self, which isn't true. And whatever you catch, you know that you tricked the fish.
Right.
You know what I mean? You know, like you tricked them.
Yeah.
And so you're never going to feel fully satisfied unless you're actually fishing with your most radically authentic self. Like, fucking here I am. Let me peel open more layers and more layers.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. Fucking love me or not.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
You know? And then when someone loves you, it'll be like, great. I wasn't fishing.
Yeah.
I was like living.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard for people to be themselves. They don't like themselves. They don't like what they are. And so they like to pretend that there's something more exceptional instead of working at it. You know, but what people really seem to enjoy is people who don't do that. People seem to really enjoy people who just work at being a better person and being better at life. And not, the more you concentrate on the image, the more people think it's gross. Yeah. Like the more you concentrate on what you're trying to project and how you would want people to view you or how you want people to talk about you, the more it seems disgusting. Like when an actor clearly has a publicist hiring a bunch of people to write fluff pieces about them, and these pieces come out, like your little spidey sense goes off. You're like, this ain't right. This is not accurate. This is not who he is. This is not who she is. This is a bullshit article. You know, this person's hiring people to write bullshit. Like, ew, you know?